Divine Maiden Cartethyia will fleur-de-lis your enemies out of existence, and today I'm gonna tell you how to build her best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So what echoes does this Divine Lady desire? None other than 4-piece Windward Pilgrimage. This is going to be our best in slot signature set. You get 40% arrow damage bonus overall when combining the 2-piece and 5-piece set effects, not to mention 10% crit rate. Cartethyia is able to apply her own stacks of arrow erosion, meaning that she's easily going to be able to proc the set herself. Easily her de facto best in slot pick. There's no reason to go for anything else other than this. Farm it as soon as you can. Otherwise, you can go for Gusts of Welkin. It should be noted that if you do have Shakona, then Gusts of Welkin is going to be a little bit worse than using 5-piece Sierra Gale, but if you don't have Shakona, then you want to use Gusts of Welkin. She gets plenty of arrow damage bonus from this after all. But just keep in mind that in both cases, you would rather use Windward Pilgrimage. However, that leads me on to my next point. You can indeed use 5-piece Sierra Gale. You would think that this would be way too outdated to use on her, but no, it actually still holds up pretty decently. With that being said, I would still farm up a brand new Windward Pilgrimage set, because it is indeed a good chunk better than Sierra Gale. You're going to want to use Reminiscence Fleur-de-Lis within her main slot. Doing so allows you to access 10% extra arrow damage bonus. As for Cartethyia stat goals, simple. You actually want to go for a 4-4-1-1-1 cost build on her. That's right, she's the first Wuthering Waves character that genuinely prefers 4-4-4-1-1-1 over a more traditional 4-3-3-1-1 setup. It would typically go 4 cost crit rate or damage, 4 cost crit damage, 1 cost HP percent, 1 cost HP percent, and 1 cost HP percent. This is because you get so much arrow damage bonus from other sources. Every single compatible set gives her plenty of it, not to mention how she has plenty of arrow damage bonus built within her own kit. It doesn't matter what weapon you use on her, you're generally always going to want to go for a 4-4-1-1-1 cost build. Note that if you're using a weapon like Emerald of Genesis or anything else that supplies you with plenty of crit rate, you're going to want one of your 4 costs to be crit damage, but otherwise, in most cases, you're going to want to have crit rate and crit damage respectively. And yes, a traditional cost setup will still be good on her, but ideally, use a 4-4-1-1-1 setup. As for Cartethyia stat goals, simple. Go for 47,000 HP, 70% crit rate, 720% crit damage, and 110% ER. On Emerald of Genesis, go for 36,000 HP, 70% crit rate, 315% crit damage, and 112% ER. The ER is covered by Emerald of Genesis' passive. You honestly have a pretty good bit of freedom when it comes to your Sonata sets. But ideally you would want to farm up her signature set. And let me remind you again, Sierra Gale is presented higher here, but if you don't have Shakona, then Gusts of Welkin is going to end up being better. You know what's really big about this lovely lady? The damage she can deal, of course. The damage she can deal. And to do that, she's going to need the right weapons. So what'll those be? Well, I really want to take a minute to emphasize the value of Defier's Thorn. Signature weapons in Wuthering Waves are always good for their respective characters. But in the Blessed Maiden's case, because she is our first HP scaling main DPS, we don't really have any other sword options as of now that are as good as Defier's Thorn or that come close to it. This is namely due to the huge amount of HP percent you get from this sword, both from the main stat and the 12% within the passive. That's not even mentioning how the rest of this weapon's passive is more magical than Fleur-de-Lis's Unicorn Horn, Death Ignore, and Damage Taken Amplification on the enemy. This weapon is utterly brilliant. I could not recommend it more. However, I understand that not everybody's going to be in the position to own this weapon. So, what do you do in that case? Then you turn to Emerald of Genesis. Sure, she's not really going to be able to do anything with the attack stats. However, the energy regen is pretty nice, and so is the crit rate. She doesn't really take advantage of any other weapon that well, so this is going to end up being one of your best bets. I would go for this if you're not able to get her signature. I would like to point out that Red Spring is a little bit better than Emerald of Genesis, because she's able to yield a good amount of basic attack damage bonus out of this. It's not significantly better than Emerald of Genesis, but it is still better than it, because it provides a similar amount of crit rate, while being able to offer more on top of that. So that's something to consider if you do own it. These next 2 weapons, I will mention them, but I don't really see much reason to use them considering that Emerald of Genesis is just better, but you can use Unflickering Valor. After all, you're getting a good amount of basic percent from this, and a little bit of crit rate, and while you really don't need that much energy, it's nice to have. But Emerald of Genesis is slightly better, so I wouldn't really default to this pick. And you can indeed use Blazing Brilliance as well. Hail Blazing Brilliance! Always ending up as one of the most universal swords in Wuthering Waves. It's a similar case to all of the other weapons. It's a good crit stick, and it provides her some okay stats, but the attack, as always, is wasted. And as for a weapon option that you can use right from the get-go, you've got the Guardian Sword. You're literally only using this because of the HP percent. and somehow it unironically ends up being better than all of the other 4-star options that you might consider using on her. It really is a situation in which you either use one of the 5 stars that can provide her with crit, or you use this 3-star sword. Her signature is ridiculously strong at the minute, but don't panic. Emerald of Genesis is permanently available from the standard banner. I really would encourage picking up the Fire's Thorn if that's within your capabilities, but if not, then don't worry. She will still be able to clear just fine on Emerald of Genesis. Then we reach her teams, who will be joining this knight on her fine journey. The Wandering Bard Shakona is going to be our best bet. She is easily Cartethia's best installed teammate without a shadow of a doubt. Her outer skill is able to amplify erosions by up to 100%, which is really nice. Especially when you consider that erosions are a large part of Cartethia's damage profile. She's also able to offer some nice arrow damage bonus, and if you were able to pull for the Bard signature, then you also got some arrow red shred on the enemies. And considering how Card is able to give herself arrow damage bonus based on how much erosion is currently on the enemy, Shakona's ability to apply erosion from off-field is absolutely excellent. If you don't have the Bard, then no problem. Sanhua rules the world once more. It is actually ridiculous how good this 4-star character is. You primarily use Sanhua for her basic percent buffing on outro, and also for the fact that she rotates very quickly. She's going to be the most free-to-play friendly bet for anybody that doesn't have Shakona. Very solid option. Now, I'm going to briefly mention this one because she is very hard to pull off, but if you're able to make Changli work, then yes, it is a strong synergy. It takes a lot of practice to learn, but if you're able to make it work, you're gonna have a great time. If you get really good at this team, then Fleur-de-Lis is actually able to take advantage of Changli's 25% Liberation Amplify, because you can outro from Changli into Fleur-de-Lis before she does her final big finisher. It's a good team, just not an easy one to play, keep that in mind. I will mention Alto because his outro skill is able to amplify arrow damage bonus, but honestly, Sanhua is going to be a lot smoother to play. However, if your Sanhua is taken up and you don't want to learn the Changli team because it's quite difficult or you just don't have her, then yes, Alto is going to end up being a completely fine option. In terms of 3rd slot teammates, Arrow Rover is going to be your best bet. He's able to increase the amount of erosion stacks that are on enemies. And he's also capable of amplifying arrow damage, so he's able to do quite a lot for the team. Also, he heals, which is nice. Though it should be noted if you're using a team option without Shakona involved, then perhaps you would rather use Verena or Shorekeeper, because they're not going to be that far off from Arrow Rover in terms of performance. Another situation in which using Shorekeeper feels especially good is whenever you have S2 Cartethyia. At that point, Carta herself can increase the amount of erosion on enemies, so you can instead opt to enjoy all that extra crit value instead. However, even at S2, you can still indeed enjoy using Air Rover, it's really up to preference. And of course, as always, Verena works fine, just keep in mind that Shorekeeper is obviously going to be better. You also want to use Bellborn Geocologne on both Verena and Shorekeeper, because Fallacy of No Return's attack buffs are going to be doing nothing for the Divine Maiden. Example teams include Cartethyia, Shakona, Air Rover, WuWa Zelda, Changli, Air Rover, 2-in-1 deal, Sanhua, Mint Arrow Chocolate Bar, Lovely Elf Lady, Alto, Shorekeeper. You get the gist. Yet how do you play Cartethyia? Well, it goes a little something like this. Intro in, basic, basic again, use her skill, use her mid-air attack, use her ultimate,
bow before me.
Use her skill, then hold her basic while she does her skill, use her skill again,
Sounding the death knell.
basic, 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 heavy attack, use her final finishing move, outro.
Evil.
Once you learn it, it's really not that complicated. Pretty much the only other thing to note is that you're using a summon as your echo, so you're able to cast it at pretty much any time. Yet how does Cartethyia work? Well, her basic attacks deal up to 4 simple arrow strikes, and she's also able to apply arrow erosion on enemies with them. Nothing much else to add here. As for her skill, she'll launch nearby enemies and plunge them to the ground, then applying 2 stacks of erosion to them. She'll then summon a sword after her. Before we discuss her Resonance Liberation, I'd like to quickly highlight her Forte circuit. Essentially, it stores all of Fleur-de-Lis's movements. It's where the entire converted moveset is listed. Her Resonance Liberation is what will then turn her into Fleur-de-Lis. That's right, it really is a 2-in-1 deal. I am so happy the Kuro Games did that. She's going to eat up 50% of her max HP and turn into Fleur-de-Lis. She's able to both apply and consume erosion while in this state, and amplifies erosion damage by 50%, while also decreasing the damage interval for erosions by 50% too. And whenever you max out her ult during the Fleur-de-Lis state, you're able to launch down an insanely large sword and purge all enemies around you. It is sick. It is sick. As for her intro skill, as Cartethyia, you're going to intro in and apply 2 stacks of erosion to targets hit. while also leaving behind a sword. Fleur-de-Lis's intro skill will have her deal arrow damage to the enemy, but no erosion will be applied. And then the outro skill is same regardless of whichever form you choose. Her outro skill essentially just improves the arrow damage that the rest of your teammates do, as long as there's negative statuses on the enemy. This mostly only benefits Chacona. As for Cartethia's inherent skills, simple. Her I-1 isn't all that useful, it just kinda helps you survive more. And it provides a nice little benefit to Arrow Rover, but otherwise, it's nothing too special. Her I-4 is far more meaningful. Enemies that have 1 to 3 stacks of erosion on them are going to take 30% more damage from Fleur-de-Lis and Cartethyia. However, if they have more than 3 stacks of erosion, then for each of those 3 stacks, enemies will take 10% more damage from Cartethyia and Fleur-de-Lis. So you can get up to 60% more damage dealt out of its inherent skill. Very, very strong. Much better than her I-1. As for Forte priority, go for this. You do really want to focus on leveling up that Forte skill and Resonance Liberation. However, as for her other 2 abilities, while I do suggest leveling them up, they aren't as important. You can get away with leaving her basic attack at level 8, and get away with leaving her skill at level 6. However, maxing them both out isn't a bad choice either, because they do still do a decent amount of damage, but ultimately, you're mainly going to be wanting to focus on that Forte and ult. Would you like to pay tribute to the Divine Maiden? Then let's talk sequences. Her S1 is honestly pretty good. She reapplies all erosion stacks to new enemy waves after killing the current one. That is very nifty. And for every 30 Forte points she has, she gains 25% crit damage. Very nice. Her S2 allows her to increase the amount of erosion stacks on enemies by +3, while also allowing her to trigger a bunch of erosion damage at once without consuming the stacks. Not to mention a whole crud ton of multiplier increases. Very, very good S2. Her S3 mostly helps out with erosion application. Very nice stuff. If your teammates are able to apply some sort of negative status, then everyone gains a 20% damage bonus for all attributes for 20 seconds. That is really solid. But unfortunately, you're kind of going to want Chacona in order to take full advantage of this S4. Her S4 is honestly kind of brick, so I'm gonna keep it real with you. Most of them up until this point have been very, very good, but this particular one is literally just for survivability. I wouldn't care about this all too much. And naturally, her S6 turns her into an absolute bomb of a unit, as if she wasn't already before this. Very, very strong, obviously one of the best S6s in the game. You're going to delete basically all content if you're able to land this S6. That aside, I would say that the best thing that you can do for your Cartethyia is pull a Chacona for her, but obviously, her banner has just passed, so if you weren't able to get her, then I think getting your signature weapon should be your main priority. All of her sequences are good. In fact, I would even say that they're great, but considering how strapped we are for weapon options currently, I would want to try and get her sig if you're going to go down the route of high asteroids-based investment. WuWa Zelda is very, very, very strong. Like, she is absolutely nuclear. It's nice that her sets have some degree of versatility, but she does really need some more weapon options. That aside, I'm pretty happy with how she turned out. And listen, can you really be upset at a 2-in-1 deal? God, I am so happy that Fleur-de-Lis is playable. How about yourself? Are you having fun with Fleur-de-Lis and Cartethyia? Let me know. As always, I have a fun little second channel where I just kinda yap about whatever in regards to gacha games. Go check that out if you like ZZZ or PGR. Hopefully this video was able to get your Divine Knight purging her enemies. This has been Juice, signing out. And I hope you enjoy obliterating the game with your massive unicorn lady.